council just finished an executive session. It's on the deal, on the notes there. And so we dealt with our new city administrator's review. Just to let you know what it was about. Are there any additions or modifications to the agenda?
None.
Well, I added A, under information discussion items, review the draft of the investment policy, but that probably is on your paper.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't on the original, it is on this one.
Okay, are there any public comments? Now we'll go on to the staff reports. Deputy Tom Bartley.
Mayor, I reported to City Manager Mr. Marshall over there that our statistician with the Sheriff's Office has been on sabbatical apparently last several days or weeks, and so September stats are non-existent at this point. However, I've been told through my supervisor that he's working on it and that we'll get some forward to you guys here hopefully this week or towards the end of the week. I don't have really any new news to report other than a follow-up as to what we talked about last month, and just a couple of citizens coming to me about the crosswalks and or painting stripes at stop signs, mainly for the safety of the children. I have not had an opportunity to talk to Public Works about that and see where that stands. Of course, we're getting into the rainy months, and painting streets probably won't fly for at least until springtime again now. So unless there's technology that beats the rain, I don't know how that works, but that's pretty much what we have so far. So, yes, sir.
I know we had talked about the crosswalks last time, and I talked to Missy, the principal, and it might be a non-issue, but I don't know if that might be something. I don't know if you've talked to her or not.
I'm talking to her about crosswalks. Yeah, I have not. No.
One area that might be of some concern is when kids are being let out at the elementary school, there's that crowd of people that pushes out into the street.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've gone by there a number of times, and kids are running from where they're letting them out to the other side, not looking either way. I mean, it seems like that's a pretty big issue, in my opinion.
And we can work with Gary Reichert on that, and the development and design of the release of where they're releasing the kids, and we can work with the parking and certain things there. I'll talk to both the principal and to Gary about it.
I was thinking maybe just that whole area be, just stripe that whole area in front of the pickup zone.
In front of that gate there.
I don't know. Just
Stripe it as a no parking all the way across, or
no parking or
2:15 to 3 o'clock or
Yeah,
whatever.
something like
Sure,
that.
sure.
I don't know.
That's something that's an option, yeah. Sure.
Have to get it posted.
Put up all, do it right,
Yeah,
notify everybody of the legal, because if you don't, some other things, to keep the, actually enforce it, is gone, so there's nothing there.
Which goes back to our ordinances that.
Correct.
That we are working on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
Our city attorney, Steve. I don't have anything. Okay. I think they still got your name spelled wrong, don't they?
That's spelled wrong.
Yep.
And I'll read it again.
I think it's an O, isn't it?
But you're almost done with me, so.
I haven't misspelled your name in some time. Is it still rolling?
That's all right, don't worry about it. Work on Steve's.
I couldn't remember.
Steve's is easier.
Even that's the one other one, that's the same name as his, I can never remember what it was two after. Okay. We'll go on to the resolutions and ordinances. The first ordinance is 729, the regulation of city parks. We'll have the first reading of that tonight, and I read it over. It's quite extensive. Is that what you want us to do, David?
Well, I wanted to bring it up, I wanted to bring it up, I mean, it should have 2 readings, and there wasn't any rush to get it. Did I send you a copy of this? The primary purpose of this was to get the original ordinance and the resolution, and then the sheet that we distribute to people all in alignment, because they weren't, and I kind of explained that in the notes. And so what I tried to do was to get this in semi-formal completion so that we could look at it and see if you had any issues with it, because I was very uncomfortable with handing out something that it was in conflict with our ordinance. And there were a couple things that I thought this made better, basically this ordinance number 729, but there isn't any particular rush right now because we don't take reservations anymore, although starting January 2nd and beyond, the parks fill up pretty quickly. And so I thought, well, this isn't a bad time, just go ahead and get started, as long as by our December meeting or something, it becomes an ordinance, either like this or how you'd like to modify it. That was the primary intent.
One thing here, so we don't get caught, is in the language, in reference, chain of order of who people can report to, because we have one in here under the general. If you read that, the city administrator or the absence of the city administrator, the public works director, if that changes.
Well, and then I mean, sometimes or as, there's general language just says city administrator or designee, and I can do that.
Yeah, I think that would be better, because if we start laying it out, then it's gonna be one of these things where it comes back and bites us later down the road.
Yeah, because the original language was, of course, quite a bit different than city administrator as one of the counselors, but we can say or designee. Yeah.
So the other part is, our fee is changing from $40 to $50.
Well, let me talk about that for a minute. It doesn't have to. But
Okay,
we did a brief analysis, and I'll be happy to do a more extensive one. The amount of time we spend in anticipation of somebody who's going to use a shelter for 12 hours, and then the amount of time that the following Monday we spend cleaning up after that is extensive. But there's a fair amount of time that's spent just in maintenance, and Jason does that to some extent. As fabulous as Rose is, she doesn't handle the chainsaw to saw some of this stuff down because she's not strong enough, nor am I for that matter, but Jason is. And when I did a preliminary analysis, is $40 is a pretty good deal. We could keep it that way. $50 is probably not enough, but as part of an overall effort to see if we're really charging adequate fees for some of our services, I thought, at least we're not going to lose quite as much if it's $50. I would expect, however, that you might want to see a more complete analysis from me. I'd be happy to provide it before this went for a second reading and passage.
and was there a part in there that we were talking about waiving the fee for nonprofits or school?
Well, it
functions?
might have been in the original. Is it completely deleted in here? If that would not have been my intent.
Okay, no, if it's not in here, I was wondering if it's something that we wanted to talk about.
Let me check that on nonprofits. I mean, I'm assuming that nonprofits, although actually when I think about it, I don't see any particular reason why they shouldn't be charged at least a nominal fee. We still have to clean up. But let me check on that, Jen.
I thought I saw it in one of them I was looking at.
I didn't get to read this just before I came in, so, and it is fairly extensive. Let me find out about that.
It's under section 5,
Is it?
yes.
And see, that much probably wouldn't have changed from the original ordinance.
I mean, exempt the sponsor from certain requirements set forth in this ordinance when it's a government agency or bona fide charitable organization. On page 3.
So what's your recommendation, David? Do you want us to read this tonight, or just discuss it, or have the first
Let me have
reading?
one more go at it and bring it back for first and second reading or reading by title a month from now.
Okay,
Let me do that.
good. The next item is to approve the minutes of the meeting of September the 12th. Everybody should have gotten a copy of it. Are there any additions or corrections? Please?
I saw none.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'd make a motion that we accept the minutes for the September 12th, 2016 meeting as presented.
Then moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the September 12th meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. By motion or consensus, approve the city's joining the local government investment pool. And this has been discussed in the past. David, do you want to?
Well, the new mechanism I have for briefing you, the CBS or council briefing sheet, explains this in some detail. I brought it to you some time ago and probably haven't done adequate research. Essentially, virtually every school district, all but maybe a half a dozen cities, and every county invests its money in the local government investment pool. It's a part of the Oregon State Treasury. It has over $2 billion in contingency reserves in case of some type of catastrophic loss. It's managed by the state treasurer. It is extraordinarily inexpensive, and I've given you examples in the briefing sheet about that, and I won't go over that. And then I had lunch with the regional manager 2 weeks ago, and he actually came up with it and says, how come you're the only city that doesn't do this? And he said, there's no good reason, because the difference between the interest rate that they pay on our $3.5 million and what we get from the local government investment pool and the corresponding charges for monthly service are dramatically different. But the revenue is between $1,800 interest that we more or less get now and $28,000 to $30,000 we get in the general fund. And you know how critical the general fund is for us. And so with his concurrence and actually with his encouragement and with the fact that virtually every municipality and school district in the state do it, I recommend we do it. All I need to do to get started is to have minutes from this meeting in which you give me permission to join the local government investment pool and make better use of our money.
I'd make a motion that we approve the city joining the local government investment pool.
I would second that.
Then moved and seconded that we as a city join the local government investment pool. Are there any other comments or questions? If not, we'll ask.
Call for the question. You ready for the question?
Yeah, we're ready for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is Matthew Cofer with Operations Manager for Marion County. And he's going to talk to us about disposal rate adjustment. Okay?
I gave you the information.
Mayor, council, staff, first of all, appreciate y'all taking the time to hear us out tonight. My name is Matt Cofer. I'm the Operations Manager for Republic Services in Marion County, 2215 North Front Street, Woodburn, Oregon. As most of you probably already know, the Marion County Commissioners decided to raise the disposal rates for the county. Marion County is a flow control county, which just means that we have no alternative options to dispose of municipal solid waste other than the waste-to-energy facility in Brooks. So this disposal increase impacts every single resident of Marion County that has trash service. The rate adjustment itself was 30%, again, on municipal solid waste, so that's just wet garbage. The impact with regards to the county and different jurisdictions varies slightly, but the impact to Sublimity would be 12%. So 30% rate hike from Marion County equates to $20 a ton, which translates to 11.8% for Sublimity, and that's based on the number of tons that are disposed of in this jurisdiction, and that impact as a percentage of revenue as far as cost goes. So the reasons for the increase, I get this question asked quite a bit. They haven't increased rates since 1992. I have a representative of the county, the Director of Environmental Services, Brian May. When I get asked this question of why so much right away rather than incremental increases over the course of time, the only answer that I've been able to come up with, and the one that makes most sense, is they didn't increase rates because they didn't have to. They had a fairly robust reserve fund. They had a successful metal mining operation out of the ash monofill. So the ash from the burner got taken to the old landfill, and they did pretty well mining the metal as long as metal prices stayed high. The price of metal, as well as other commodities, however, has tanked. The cost of operations just started exceeding the revenue that it was producing, so they had to suspend those operations. The other major factor was the price of natural gas, which is a coast-to-coast nationwide phenomenon, with all the improved methods such as fracking as far as extracting natural gas, but that drove the power down. So, as the waste-to-energy facility, if you broker their power out, the price of power down, is again a loss of revenue. They don't know that exact gap, but it was significant enough for them to come to the table and figure out ways that they could close that gap. And the solution came from solid waste and raising the disposal rates at the burn.
So you're asking us to approve 11.8% increase?
Yes, sir. And y'all are pretty much used to us coming in every 2 or 3 years because cost of operations have increased, and we would ask for a rate adjustment based on Republic Services operating costs. There are no Republic Service operating costs rolled into this. That 11.8% number is strictly disposal. There's nothing else associated with it. That's it.
As I understand it, this is just a pass-through from your added expense to us.
Yeah. Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay.
That 11.8% is based on our current tonnage that we're putting into the system.
Yes, sir.
Did anybody look at, which you may or may not have, the new subdivision, the impact, and the additional 100+ homes is going to put on that into the system, our system here, when you look at Sublimity?
We haven't looked at any expansion. The disposal rate increase actually took place on October 1st.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, y'all have been in transition of sorts, as have we. And again, we had to go to every single jurisdiction, so it didn't seem fair to come in and give y'all a first look at this and then ask for a retroactive October 1st. So this increase would take place November 1st. Regarding the new homes, they of course, they would fall into the new rate rate structure.
I didn't know if that would throw your numbers off, because, you know, it will be an increased tonnage going to, from here, so.
By about March or April, we'll wrap up the cost of service analysis for each separate jurisdiction. And if y'all want to sit down and take a look at that as it was in 2016, you can kind of project out to what that means as far as revenue for us, franchise fees for Sublimity, so on and so forth, what that impact would be.
Well, I just didn't want, you know, whether that 11.8 was gonna cover the cost or not, you know. Because, but from what you're saying, I take it that you're gonna evaluate and could come back again after March and look at.
It's possible that the expansion wouldn't have that impact. It would be more or less us evaluating, you know, we haven't been here since 2014 for any additional rates.
Right.
Taking a look at what that margin looks like, and then projecting out, is that disposal, is that adequate coverage?
Right.
So it's possible you could come back for a rate adjustment after the cost of service analysis in March and April?
It's possible, it's possible, but the fact of the matter is this year it wasn't necessary, last year it wasn't necessary. There are plenty of other different factors that play in that. We got more efficient in Sublimity. We got a huge break on fuel, as everybody knows, as an operating cost. I mean, there's all sorts of market factors at play that determine that. Disposal is a huge cost for everybody, but that's been static for so long. And then our request for the increase to cover the additional, that should level itself out as well. So possible, yes, sir. I can't rule it out, but that'll all shake out after we take that hard look at 2016 and those associated operating costs.
As long as everybody's kind of thinking the same way, it's been considered, then I don't have an issue.
Yes, sir. There's 4 jurisdictions that we did go in for rates, as well as disposal. Those were approved, but those were in cases where that margin, the profit margin had deteriorated to the fact that we were either operating at a loss or close to it. So in the case of Sublimity and many others, however, 7 others, it was determined that simply disposal has to be adequate.
So if we don't approve this, how does that work?
That question stumped me in 9 weeks, I won't lie. With respect to the franchise agreement, all rates, whether they're Republic Services rates or not, have to be approved by y'all. If y'all should come to the determination that you weren't going to approve these rates, that goes into that cost of service analysis model. And after that shakes out, and then those months, October through March or whatever, that the Republic Services have been needing the additional costs, would definitely factor into the decision as to whether or not to come request a rate adjustment.
What's the savings you've seen in the fuel costs? What's the percentage of savings in fuel costs?
I don't know that off the top of my head, I apologize. But there's a budgeted fuel number that we project out.
Yes,
For the
so-
year, well, however
Right.
much there was a gain on that, I don't know that number.
You guys come in and ask for an increase, you show us what your costs are, and part of that is based upon your fuel costs, and so the citizens pay based upon that. I'm just wondering how that's taken into account, because obviously that's quite a large savings for you guys.
Correct. If we came in for a rate adjustment next year, we would show year over year as far as operating costs from 2014, 15 through 16. At that point, we could get a look at that fuel and see exactly what those savings numbers would be to the dollar, basically, of what we saved on fuel, for sure.
And I think that was my comment when they came in 2 years ago, when fuel was high, and they came in and said our costs were going. And I said, that's awesome, because we approved it. I said, so next year when it drops, you'll be back giving us a rebate. You know, I'm waiting for you to come back with a refund, saying that, you know, it didn't quite pencil out to what we expected, because it took a dramatic drop, as you know. But I think that's fine, you're gonna provide that, then when you come in the next time and show those yearly, or those cost of doing business rates. But I'd also like to make sure that our new administrator gets the documentation for this 11%, how that equation came together, so we can put that in our files. So if that isn't indeed the case, then at least we have, because what you're saying is it literally is a pass-through. You're not gonna be gaining, there's no profit for your company in that.
It's strictly a pass-through based on your tons, based on the revenue received from
Right.
Sublimity.
So if we could have some kind of documentation that we could have on file, because it will, I mean, I imagine it's gonna come up again when 2 years passes and then the community goes, we just had 11%, now we need it, you know, just, so that'd be awesome if you could get that for us, and then we can have the right paperwork for that.
Completely agree. Y'all have, I believe in your package, just that summary page snapshot, but we can get, David, we can get more detailed and get a
Yeah, they may
breakdown.
not have that in this package.
Okay.
What are you talking about?
It's not there.
So you're saying there's a summary?
It's just a quick little, oh, I've got a copy of it. Got my chicken scratch on it.
So do you have that here?
I do, but I didn't put it in this one.
And to your point, sir, about the fuel costs and about the savings, those operational costs that we can mitigate, or that we get a break on, and we realize savings on, again, stretches out that cycle of us
Coming back, yeah. So, yeah, so, but, we'll see.
Are there any other questions, comments? Somebody,
I guess I have one question. So the city of Salem, I believe they get a green barrel picked up every week, and then recycle gets picked up every other week. Is that correct?
Staten does too, I believe.
Dayton does that too?
Yeah.
Why are we not in that? Why are we out of that?
So, it's an excellent question. It varies on jurisdictions. In the past, in order to keep costs down, past councils have not opted for that weekly service. There are jurisdictions that we currently do service, similarly, weekly, yard degree, every other week recycle.
So they
Again,
just,
it was a cost
Yeah,
consideration.
just so you know, the last time they came and they were proposing a rate increase, they gave options to the city, like if you want this, it'll be this much, and this, and so there was options, and then the council chose the one that you got now.
Right.
Thank you.
And there are some jurisdictions that don't even have it. Dottsville is a good example. Almsville just this year opted for every other week for every service, but up until this point, they haven't had it. And again, it was all cost considerations and what did the citizens want? Did they really want it? So we can help out with that as far as circulating surveys and getting respondents to see if there's any interest in additional service, but obviously additional cost.
Yeah. Maybe when you do your cost of service analysis in March and April, maybe we can put that together, I
Sure. I can work with my counterparts and with the accounting team and generate sort of an annual report for Sublimity that kind of breaks it all down by line item. Here's the revenue, here's everything that got tacked out of that gross, here's the net, and then the percentage of what it means as far as operating income for public service.
okay, are there any other questions? If not, what do we want to do? Anybody want to make a
I'll make a motion that we approve the request from Republic Services for the 11.8% increase in dump fees at the Marion County burner.
Been moved and seconded that we approve this 11.8% increase. If there are no other questions, we'll ask for anybody have any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Could I ask you one side, what did you determine about Mount Angel? Did they, you said they didn't approve it. What was the outcome?
Ray Eater stumped me with the question that Dean asked me about what happened if they didn't approve it.
But they did approve it.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
Or did they approve? I thought you said they didn't.
No, he asked he was the first one to ask what happens if we don't.
Oh, I see, okay.
And I stared at him.
I see, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
We actually had that too a couple of years ago, because we were on the verge of not approving. And it was like, well, what if we don't? It was the same response. Well, we're not quite sure, we're looking at that. Because I don't think it's ever happened there.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you all for your time, I appreciate it sincerely. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll turn it over to our city administrator.
Three or four quick items, a couple notes that I didn't get into the packet. The candidates forum for people who are running for election will be a week from tomorrow night at 7 to 8:30 in this room. We're thinking of providing a little in way of goodies, a little something to chew on or something like that, something to drink, non-alcoholic, presumably. But that is run by, I forget her name. Kelly. And that's 7 to 8:30, a week from tomorrow night here. We also posted something to Facebook and our webpage about any volunteers for a Christmas parade this year, and there have been 0 volunteers. And unless you say otherwise, we won't be doing one. Also, because of her schedule, is not interested in heading up, wouldn't know what to do anyhow. Apparently, we've had people who have done it in the past and are familiar with it, but nobody has volunteered.
They had already asked, and I had asked the question whether or not it was going on, and the group it's been the original group has been working on it.
Well, okay.
Yeah, it actually, a citizens group has been working on this, because they understood the impact that, staff at the city was not able to work on it, so basically, they put everything together, get the applications and now do the tree, decorating and everything like that. We just, a couple little things, side assist, being set up.
Okay, I didn't, since I've not been through before, nor have Lisa, we didn't know what might be expected of the city, its staff or anything else.
Right, yeah.
And
No,
Who
there's
is in charge of it?
Kim Zuber and Renee Hendricks
With the parade.
with the parade, yeah, and the tree lighting. Because we've taken it over, basically, the fire department has handed the tree lighting part, decorating over to the city. They still have their function that they do over there, but,
Okay.
so.
So everything is fine, is there anything you expecting me to do?
At this point, no, but I will have Kim I'll get a hold of her to let her, so she can come in and talk to you, but, yeah, they're planning on it. I mean, this has been in the works.
We may need a Santa.
Oh,
I'm not qualified. I'm sure we can find one somewhere. Other items, and these are very quick, although they're complex and long topics. This is just for information I'll be working on.
David, just one thing
Yeah.
before you go ahead.
Yeah.
Are we gonna videotape the candidates' forums?
I haven't even thought about that. I think you probably should if you'd like to.
I think we should.
I mean, this is an every 2-year event.
If you'll, I don't know if we need to, well, we're probably gonna have to approve that before. like tonight.
You should, since it's a week from tomorrow night, I think if you want to bring that up as new business and if
Can
you're
we?
available.
What would be the cost to do something like that?
How much do you have?
Hour and a half?
No,
No, that's, yeah, we have an hour and a half. How much do you have?
It'll be the same rate as the council meeting.
So, and I don't know what.
It's $150.
Well, I think we should do it, and I think we can afford to do it. I haven't thought about it at all, frankly. But why don't we do it? I mean, it happens every 2 years.
I would support that. Do we need to make a motion? Make a motion that we pay Ken Carpenter to video the candidates forum at $150.
Is there a second?
Second.
Then moved and seconded that we have Ken Cartwright videotape the forum of the candidates. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
There was one other small item I wanted to point out. Both Gene and I have been kind of involved in this, the Great American Eclipse, August 19th through the 21st, although the eclipse doesn't last that long, of course, it lasts about 2 minutes and 2 seconds. However, unless you say otherwise, right now, I'm planning on not letting the parks be reserved for that weekend, the 19th and the 20th. Not that we have anything planned necessarily, but I think it would be a good time to set that aside. And again, since people start calling about January 2nd for the parks, we'll just say that particular weekend, no reservations for the parks, because almost certainly something will go on. I'm assuming better. So I just wanted to run that by you also. Then I got 2 ordinances and what I call progressive enforcement I'd just like to talk about briefly. And this will be a continuing discussion, I think, between now and the proposed budget, possibly an ordinance and or a resolution. I've included some information in the briefing sheets on business licenses, resolution 910-5, fee schedule. And you'll hear me saying this a lot, we are the 7th lowest city of 242 cities. You all know this, I know, on the permanent levy rate, 0.7135 cents per $1,000. The average in the state for 242 cities is $3.35, so we're about 1/5 of what an average city gets. That is not a whole lot for the general fund. And so if there's an opportunity and a justification for doing anything to increase that so we have at least a little bit of revenue in the general fund, I would like to at least investigate it. In the case of business licenses, as best I can tell from all the cities I've looked at, and I include a color chart that shows that, we charge less for business licenses than anybody else in the state. We charge $25 and then $5 for a renewal. It's not based upon number of employees, it's not based on a lot of things, as best I can tell. I would like over time to expose you to more information on business licenses. And one of the things we do is we keep track of them in Excel spreadsheets and not in Excel software, which means we do duplicate work, basically. When we finally get the software that we want, it's called Cassell Connect. We'll activate the business license and bill out of that for business licenses. I don't know exactly when that will happen, but soon. I think business licenses are something we really want to look at, update the ordinance. And what I'd really like to do is have a fee schedule of all of our fees, penalties, dues, all the charges. A lot of cities will have simply a fee license for everything that a city charges, and we'll review it annually rather than have it as a separate resolution referenced by another ordinance. And that's something I'll be working on now between now and the proposed budget. As I pointed out at the last meeting, ordinance 711, the water sewer fund, is a complex work. There's a lot to do, to talk about water rights, water rates, the a relative anemic status of the water fund. And we'll be talking about that. It's a very complex issue, of course, and we've been working on it with the new development and other things, but I'm going to continue to review that because the water fund doesn't seem to me to be terribly healthy, and I'm not sure what. And part of the reason for it, and part of it is because of the new meters and everything we spent quite a bit of money on, but there's an imbalance somewhere. And we also have a public works people charging incorrectly to the funds, and I'll be fixing that this year, and it'll certainly be fixed by July 1st at the start of the new fiscal year. So we'll be working on those. I'll give you a good example in this colored drafts as to where the city stands with comparable cities, and I'll always do that so that you can compare those. And then Tom and I have been kind of talking, we've actually started this, something called progressive enforcement. Progressive discipline for employees is the way I look at it. A verbal warning, a written warning, and then something happens. And what we discovered is that we're probably not as aggressive in finding somebody that is defined in ordinance as something that should have been fined. And what we'll do, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but what we thought we'd do is something, if you sit in Tom's car, you see he can record anything at any time of what's going on, and if there's somebody who's left something on the street in the same place for 73 hours, it exceeds our ordinance, and we'll give them a verbal warning, just like we would in kind of a recalcitrant employee who's not paying much attention. He can document that. We go back and we discover 3 weeks later that the same person is having the same problem. In this case, we get the fearsome city manager to go up with a uniformed person and talk, and now, and write, or maybe it's a formal letter, it says one more time, and you're going to be fined. And I don't especially believe in fining, but I believe less in having ordinances that says you're going to be fined and not do anything about it, because then you have no teeth at all. And so we're kind of working on that to see if that works, and we may have to modify some ordinances, which is not worth it. It's not relevant to fine somebody. In some cases where it's offensive to neighbors, it probably is, but we don't have a really long history. In the short time I've been able to look at it, we don't have a long history of actually doing it. And so Tom and I kind of talked about that, and with your permission, we'll continue along those lines, saying if you violate the ordinance, and you've had 2 warnings, and the ordinance says on the 3rd time, and of course we have to revise the ordinance to say that, it's a $100 fine, we're going to fine them. But I'd love your input on that either tonight or some other time.
Are you, you're not doing city ordinances?
We certainly can,
Yeah, but you're not currently.
currently not.
And that wasn't in, we'll go ahead, you want to?
Well, part of it was because of the way our ordinance, there is no fee or schedule for the penalty. So until that got corrected, I guess the question I have is, say you go out and you give the verbal warning, don't do this, and they don't comply, and you go out the second time, give a written notice, they comply at that point, but all of a sudden, X amount of time passes and they revert back to it. Is it progressive from that point where you stopped, or you have to reset the whole clock?
Well, that's a good question. Tom?
I would think that that individual would have knowledge of the ordinance. And if that person goes and violates that ordinance again, then it's immediately a citation.
I guess it boils back to the tall grass ordinance, where notices are being sent out. Some people were good in complying, well, they complied, and then they kept up on it. But then there are others that you sent it to them, and every time you wanted it done, you had to go through the process and everything like that, so.
And that's a good question. I don't have an easy answer for you, but I expect that we'll work through this in the upcoming weeks or months.
Okay.
I really want to come up with a fee schedule that is something that's reviewed annually. And it's reviewed annually as part of the budgetary process. For example, even if we had adequate fees for a business license, since, I forget what year it was. I went back to 2010 and looked at the CPI for urban areas, and Portland is used as the baseline. And even then, it's, and we know, of course, we've had almost no inflationary rate at all. But even if you go back a few years, it's almost a 4% increase. And there's no particular reason since we'd be paying our employees probably more than 4% increase in 5 or 6 years, there's no reason why the fees, by and large, as a general measure, wouldn't go up at least what it costs to enforce and to basically keep current. And we don't do any of that, but it would be fairly simple in the fee schedule. And in some cases, it won't even be necessary because it ought to be a one-time thing. But those are the kind of things I'm trying to bring all together for at least the ordinances that have come to my attention so far.
I think legal counsel has brought this up in the past where when we have discussed fees and that, you know, how they were incorporated in the ordinance or, you know, and you had actually said that probably should have looked at a fee schedule so it's all printed out there so it's right there in front of everybody all the time. So
Yeah, it's easy to reference it, because right now the ordinance might reference a separate resolution, and then the person, and you're talking about doing it online, and then the person's gotta go from here and find the resolution, and some of the web pages I've seen seem to be otherwise organized. I've spent 20, 30, 40 minutes trying to figure out what the fee was.
Right.
And I think it was Almsville, and maybe one of the two other local ones, and they just go to the fee schedule, there it is. It's a single place. Now, that'll take a little bit of work to get there, but I think for the sake of our customers, basically, we want to do something like that, so we're kind of working on that.
Do we have to do anything with Tom's contract if he's going to be enforcing the ordinances? Is that part
I
of the
believe that was in the agreement, I can confirm with either the sergeant or the commander, as far as
It's
the ordinances would go through justice court.
But we haven't done that.
We have not done that, but that was in that part of the agreement.
But the city has been doing that now. The ordinances, not parking. Well, I know about parking, because I know this is
Most of the parking related issues that I've dealt with are the abandoned vehicles, which fall under ORS.
You can
so
take care of
then I
that.
take care of that side of it.
Well, I know, because it's a 3-time-a-year event for me with that rental house across the street. And I call 3 times a year and say, can they cut their grass? And they send out the letter, and they stretch it to the end. I think they actually go out there. So I would just be curious to see, because when it comes to nuisance, when it's reported, it's already a nuisance. And so it's there. So then if you send them a letter to an out-of-state person or whoever that is, that's another 2 weeks, and they don't comply. And then you go out there, that's another, by the time it's done, the summer's over, the weeds have all bloomed and blown away. It's like, so I don't know how that, and I certainly don't want to burden the sheriff's office with becoming an ordinance officer. I mean, I know you're excited to do that, but that's so time consuming and so
Well, I haven't thought about that aspect of it.
resource intensive. I mean, it's just, you could spend your whole life chasing ordinances, I'm sure, in this town. So
Absolutely.
I would just say, you're working with Tom is great, but I don't want to overburden him with tall grass and.
Well, I think there would be certain ordinances that would be enforceable through the sheriff's office and justice court than, say like the nuisance of the grass and stuff like that. So.
I think the only time that Tom's gonna, if it's deals with law enforcement, like a parking issue, or there has to be a citation issued, then he would be involved. Other than that, it would be staff.
The city, so there's 2 different.
Good. Question, David. How many businesses do we have in Sublimity?
Well, I'm not sure. I think 60 to 70, 75. It's in the spreadsheet now, which I don't fully understand. Needs to be brought up to date, but I haven't done that because I just want to update it once into Cassell. More than I would have thought, but of course, we probably missed some. There's in-house businesses that are historically very difficult for cities to track down, basically. In this city, its size and within 1 square mile shouldn't be difficult. I think there's a fair amount of work. I think Carol did a good job in keeping up with it, but it's in a spreadsheet I don't understand, and I just want to get it into Cassell so we can start using that. But it's something that we'll be working on over the next several months.
Just, David, for a little bit of historical perspective to that, when that business license first got passed, the original drafts had a larger fee schedule. And then the council looked at it and decided that They were really just trying to recoup a little bit of the cost, because the city forever didn't have a business license. So this is a relatively new animal. And the city wanted it so they'd have a way of knowing what was going on where, if there was something happening and you had to have emergency services involved, and maybe the city would have a little database that would say, well, this business is doing this or that. So it was really just designed for information.
It wasn't designed for revenue.
It wasn't designed for revenue. Some of the business people that came to the meeting expressed some concern about, the revenue side of it. And that's when the city said, well, let's just charge a nominal fee to cover some basic costs, because we were really after just the information. So it wasn't designed initially as a revenue item.
Well,
So that's the
I think
historical context.
Yeah, you could see that, and that may be fine, and especially if we wanted to bring more businesses in. I think a business that has 30 or 40 employees for a $5 renewal fee, I don't see why to charge them anything at all, basically. But you can tell it wasn't for revenue. My concern is that the general fund is already so anemic that it's not primarily to generate revenue, but it is in an extent. And I don't know how to word it such that, well, we're just going to charge businesses a lot of money because. No, we don't want to do that. But I think you could set a baseline for 1 to 2 employees of $30 or $40. I'm just making this up right now as I go, and say, and it increases with CPI because there's work that has to be done without being inordinate. If you look at the charge, there's some cities that charge a great deal of money. I came from one, the city of Newport, which had a lot of businesses and there's a lot of money generated. We could say that that's not the primary intent, but it is something to at least slightly augment a general fund that whose primary source of revenue is almost hopelessly inadequate. And if you're a city making $4 per thousand compared to a city of 79 cents per thousand, we're really going to have to accept that as being the way we want it to be and to stay that way, or at least try to augment it a little bit. And I'm kind of thinking of that way, plus a 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 person business might take more time to monitor and to respond to. I know we have issues where, and I forget the name, I'm still learning all of this stuff, but all the car dealers and everything down there, there's a lot of things that go on in those streets that requires Tom to go down there and Alan to go down there. I'm not sure that a business that's got that many employees should pay the same as somebody who is a CPA working out of their home, $25. It doesn't make much sense to me, because one visit by Tom costs more than that. So I think there's a lot of things to weigh. I just don't have an easy answer, and that's why I say between now and February, we'll just keep bringing this up to you and say, here's what it looks like we'll put in the proposed budget by way of this ordinance and fee schedule or something like that.
Okay.
What does the city have to do with the business license? Like what, beyond if there's an issue that Tom would respond to, what does the city do with the
Well,
business
historically,
license?
historically a business license, and I'm not an expert in it, but historically you want to know that there's a restaurant there. I mean, if you have a restaurant, it has to meet certain food service requirements, and you may have somebody who's not paying much attention to the issues of fire and safety, for example, and so they register in a business license to say, I'm opening a restaurant. And having actually worked with an architect who designed a restaurant and everything that happens in a restaurant once a long time ago, I've never forgotten that. You want your city to know that this is a restaurant, that if they're not adhering to safety standards having to do with all types of devices that can burn that thing down in a hurry, there's a fair amount of oversight that's required, or should be. And certainly you want your fire and your police to be able to respond to that and to know that the business is even in town, as opposed to a CPA who's probably not going to have any furnaces, ovens, stoves, or anything else, and she's working there as a CPA, and so maybe you make a case that this is something that's just $25 or $30, but these other people, or somebody who's got 50 employees and got vehicles parked all over the place, and it takes a fair amount of oversight to make sure that they don't violate the parking standard. That's not the same thing as a CPA in business by herself. And so it's who's there, what are they doing, are they meeting all of their requirements for food and for safety and for everything else that is inherent in a business. And they do that through the business license. It isn't primarily revenue generating, Because if you're making 10 to 15 or $20 million in property taxes in your general fund, $30,000 or $40,000 in business licenses is nothing. But it lets people know, an Allen across the street, that you've got this business here, and it might need an inspection every once in a while. If that makes sense to you.
The other part is, we get requests from other agencies, other chambers, you know, how many businesses do you have, how many employees? It's a tracking of everything that goes on. And then, once in a while, you'll get a business that will pop up and it really doesn't meet the requirements. You know, it's maybe a little bit more intense in a residential area. Because we had a couple that were making pottery and you wouldn't have known just looking at it, but their power draw and everything they had for the kilns were just unreal.
Yeah.
You know, and so it goes back to fire code and some other things that, you know, we're able to give people that information.
I have nothing else.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go on to the council reports. I have nothing. Okay, Bob. Gene, do you have anything?
Well, I did the Great American Eclipse. It was attended by multiple state agencies and other chamber people. It's pretty much being driven by Travel Oregon and the chambers, you know, for drawing in businesses and the big event. Yes, it's only going to last 2 minutes, and we're right in the epicenter. I mean, we're pretty much dead center. It's 60 miles each side of that, so we'd still be able to be seen. But with that being said, the Oregon Office of Emergency Management, they've got a 23-page draft report, how they're going to implement things and everything like that. To shorten this up, I talked to Deputy Barber, I talked to Chief Hume about the impact that we'll have here on the city. Basically, the fire department is budgeting extra people that day, so they'll have all rig staff able to go right away. And then the biggest concern that we have here is that we keep our main streets open, so that we can get emergency vehicles and everything like that going. The Office of Emergency Management is going to be sending this report of all the details to the Marion County Emergency Services Planner, and it'll be kind of sent out through the Sheriff's Office and everything like that. But we're pretty much covered, since we're not going to have any events or anything like that. We're not sponsoring anything. There should be very minimal, if any, cost impact to the city.
I think most of the thing about that is that the amount of people that are going to be here is what they were talking about.
Right, they estimated, well, at one point, you know, they're saying 1 million people, and then I've heard, you know, probably 70,000. And probably won't be a lot within the city limits where, yeah, there's going to be a couple of good viewing areas. Where the chaos is going to be out in the rural area, in farmers' fields, which we won't have anything to do with, but also Oregon Department of Agriculture is trying to kind of figure out how to link up with the farms and get the information, because right now, Travel Oregon is telling most of the businesses over in Madras that require a lot of trucking fuel and everything to make sure you got enough fuel for 2 weeks, because starting this day through probably the following Wednesday, you're not going to get through anything over there. And so there's
the traffic's going to be so bad?
yeah, that's another area that is going to be, you know, Smith Rock. They track this, but they're trying to shut everybody down so everybody can see the eclipse. And it wasn't, from what I was hearing, it wasn't real realistic, you know, and everything that was going on. So, but I don't think, you know, our only major street or road that we're going to have to worry about, or actually we won't have to worry about, it's ODOT and it's Highway 22, which will be OSP. You know, they're going to be in Marion County.
Okay, thank you, Gene.
No.
Brian, do you have anything?
Yeah, no, just, where are we at? Did our marijuana initiative get on the ballot?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Is that all you have?
That's it.
Thank you. Jim, do you have any,
The city council goals, I'd like to meet next couple weeks. I'll check with the council and see if we're available.
do
Just
you
to-
have somebody that moderates this thing? Like, wasn't, didn't you tell me that somebody?
Jenny Messmer
Yeah.
has some experience with that. I think our first meeting just has to get started, so we
Okay.
have a starting point and then contact Jenny.
Well, keep us surprised with that.
Yeah, and I was hoping that we could get this in the next couple weeks.
We have to post that.
That part, I don't know, is it gonna be I understand it's a work session.
Yeah, well, it'd be wise to post it. We've always,
We have to post that,
public meeting.
a work session, if we
Work
schedule one.
session, I don't.
Yeah, any meeting is a public meeting, so a work session is still a public meeting, still need to be posted.
Yeah, so
24
so
hours.
Public can still,
And how many weeks do we have to give, or how much notice prior?
24 hours.
Okay.
Okay, keep track of it.
All right, and then David and I met with Senator Merkley last week, he was in town. It was a good meeting, he was here for 45 minutes and wanted to know about how the council, or the city's goals were going, and with the change of, with having a new city administrator. He brought up the eclipse, wondered how that was going. So it was a good meeting.
Okay,
That's all I have.
okay, thank you, Jim. There are no other business, we'll